My name is Paul Shelley, and welcome to The AstroHistorian. This is a channel dedicated to studying all things sci-fi and space lore and discussing their impact. Welcome to IAE 2953, where we're going to be going onto the floor of Drake and the smaller manufacturers of Argo, Consolidated Outland, Kruger, and Greycat. This is a live stream. Welcome all. Now, normally I wear nice and fancy suits, but today, because it's Drake Day, I'm kind of just I wear this. The reason why I'm combining both of these days is a fortuitous thing in that they were right next to each other, but also that the actual manufacturers, the smaller manufacturers, don't have a lot of lore. A lot of their vehicles just don't have a lot of lore, period. So they end up being kind of barren. But we are going to be doing this live. So this is live. I'm on the floor of IAE 2953 with these folks here. These folks are live. They are walking with us throughout the entirety of the hall, where we're going to give the history of these manufacturers and then some background for each of the ships, just in general. So, with that being said, give me a few moments to get started. See, make sure that person isn't trying to invite me to a party. There we go. All right. So with that all being said, we can just dive right into this because we're just going to kind of get through this. After this, we're going to do a question and answer session. So if you have any questions about these manufacturers, the lore of these manufacturers, or just any questions about lore in general, feel free to ask them. I know some people want to talk about the game and game development and stuff like that. I do a lot of those discussions on my other channel, the Astro Pub Live on YouTube. This is mostly focused on the lore. So if you can't ask those questions, it's fine. I'll do my best to try to answer them, but I'm mostly focused on those sorts of questions. And if you did enjoy this, and you have been enjoying these all the week, as always, to remind you to like the video, subscribe for more content, hit that bell icon to be notified when these come out. I'll be live again tomorrow, Friday and Saturday from the floor of IAE 2953, and Saturday I'm going to do a little video as well afterwards. So you all voted on it. It's going to be on the cargo crisis of the 29th century. So it'll be an interesting kind of like cap off to all of the stuff we've been talking about this week. So that all being said, let's get started with the tour. Turn off the music for now. All right, so welcome to the floor tour for Drake Day. I'm going to pull up Drake's notes here. Some stuff I can explain. So, to understand Drake Interplanetary, what we have to understand is that it is the result of a failed bid for a UAE military contract. In 2845, a team led by engineer Jan Dredge proposed a ship for what was called the Volksfighter contest. This contest was to build a low-cost, fast production, easy-to-repair frontline fighter for the UAE, armed forces and for militia. When they lost the bid, they decided that they could still sell their product to the public. So they founded Drake Interplanetary because the name sounded cool. And they started, their first thing was to release what was called the DS-1 Cutlass. Now, the DS-1 Cutlass would become what we know today as the Cutlass Black. And for the first 30 or so years, they sold like crazy. They made a ton of money off just the Cutlass. And in fact, they were pretty fortuitous because around this time period was when the Van Duel started to peak up again in intensity. So demand for combat-capable ships that were also pretty good and rugged to be function on the frontier was at an all-time high. So they rode this kind of chaotic time to higher and higher profits. The problem being is that shortly after the release of the Cutlass, another group of individuals began to find that these ships were very valuable. That group being pirates and outlaws. Soon, by the end of the 29th century, the Cutlasses were responsible for a vast majority of all pirate attacks. And this was bad news for Drake. So they began to diversify and expand into other ship designs, including the Caterpillar, the Dragonfly, the Herald, the Corsair, the Vulture, and beyond. So that is the basic gist. Though in very recently, in the 2940s, a kind of a investigative reporter did some behind the scenes. They kind of got one-on-one with Jan Dredge, posing as a new Drake employee, and asked them about the whole selling to outlaws. And she basically straight set up, I don't care who they are as long as they have the money. This was then published and became a big scandal and forced Jan Dredge to resign. Her son took over, but he then was replaced by the board by a man by the name of Andon Arden, who is the current CEO and head of Drake, who actually has a statement in the IAE brochure, which is kind of inflammatory. He's taken the company in a different direction, but still very rebel and outlaw sort of kind of mentality. Though Drake has been known, all of their ships are really well known for being very simple, meaning they're easy to maintain and fix. The joke is that Drake makes nothing but the Cutlass in different sizes and different shapes because all of the parts are interchangeable. So it's a cheap, easy to repair, easy to maintain vehicle, which has a lot of firepower and offers a lot for a very low price. And that's what's made them very popular with not only outlaws, but frontier militia and frontier people in general. And so they kind of have adopted that sort of bad boy attitude. And in one of the first places they actually set up was in a city called Odessa, on the planet of Berea in the Magnus system. And that's where they are still today. Magnus was the headquarters of the UAE Navy's main shipyards for a long time, then it was abandoned. So those shipyards were remaining idle, and so Drake came in and took them over and started using those shipyards to produce their ships, kind of saving the economy. And so the system itself was considered kind of like outlaw fringe as well, even though it's part of the UAE. So, and the other thing that's kind of interesting is that system is connected to Stanton. So it's one of those few systems that we're probably going to see sooner rather than later. With that all being said, let's take a look at what's on the floor available from Drake Interplanetary. Let's start with the big Chongus in the back. So, welcome to the Caterpillar. Now, this is a unique design because this is the second ship that Drake ever produced. The first ship being the Cutlass, which we know today is the Cutlass Black. This is the kind of more peaceful brother of the Cutlass. This was designed during the height of all of the bad press for the Cutlass was getting. Jan Dredge said that they needed something that was more dedicated to cargo rather than a combination of combat and cargo. So they began working on this. The Caterpillar, the Caterpillar was unveiled at IAE 2871. So at an IAE event. And it was unveiled to a lot of confusion and boos. A lot of people were not impressed with the design. In fact, one comment said, "I've never seen a new ship that looked 30 years old." And so they got a lot of hate when originally released, though shortly after its initial being unveiled, a lot of people began to change their tune because what they saw was that the ship was designed to be modular. And it was one of the first ships. The kind of mass marketed appeal was its modularity. If you look at these individual cargo areas, you notice there's kind of a segment between them. In theory, all of these segments can be swapped out for other modules at any given time. So this means that this is not just a cargo ship, it's whatever you want it to be. And on top of that, the actual price of the entirety of this ship was incredibly low compared to its competitors. And that's still today. It can hold a lot of cargo for very low price in comparison. And that really won it over because, of course, it's also a Drake ship, so it's easy to maintain. There's lots of spare parts around, and it's generally a pretty beloved ship. Now, there is one problem, though. In 2903, on June 21st, a caterpillar broke out from heavy traffic and rammed into a transport and used its front sensors. If you look over here, these little front sensors here, these are not weapons. These are kind of sensors up in the front. Use these to immobilize the transport. Then the doors opened, pirates cut their way through the hull, and within 5 minutes, they were able to get in, steal everything they could from the transport, and get out. Now here's the secret. This area right here, this command module is detachable. This is an independent small ship with its own quantum drive and jump drive. This command module is fairly impressive because if you think about it, the idea behind this is you could quite literally detach this command module and use this tractor beam to load and unload the cargo if you need to. But during the Kesserling, which is the name of the ship heist, the ship they were heisting, they went back into the Caterpillar, got into the command module, undocked the command module, and fled away, and never were caught. So the Caterpillar has always been heavily associated with that heist, so it still kind of has this bad boy reputation, though it is still very common to see on the frontier and is still one of the more popular cargo ships. In fact, Kovalex uses them quite extensively for their delivery because of the unique option of having a sealed pressurized cargo container with a lot of cargo compared to the MISC's open space designs of the hulls. With that, let's go talk about the cutters. So, the Cutter and the Cutter Scout. Now, the Cutter is doesn't really have a lot of lore, but we do know it was first introduced in 2920. So this ship is it's a little bit older. This is the most recent version of the Cutter, being released in 2952. But this model has been around for a while. Now, this is just more of a theory, but the success of the Vulture, especially around the installing of Andon Arden as CEO, seems to have been the direction that they wanted to go. Because if you look at these engines here, these engines do not look like Cutlass engines. The joke that everything's a Cutlass, but different. Different sizes or different descriptions. These are not based off of the Cutlass engines, but are more based off of the Vulture's engines, kind of a miniature version of it. So you can imagine that a lot of this this vehicle itself is much more the child of the Vulture rather than the Cutlass, which removes a lot of the stigma of this ship from being just a small Cutlass to being more of a utility ship like the Vulture. No one's committed crimes in Vultures, of course, never. But it's probably one of the more popular starter ships in the game today because it has this nice cargo bay which can hold small vehicles, especially I believe a mule can fit in here. It also has kind of space for one living quarters in there, as well as pretty easy for these other things. Pretty easy to live. Now, we're also going to look at the Scout real quickly. We don't know how old the Scout is, though it's presumably the same age as the regular Cutter, though it could be brand new. The Scout is sort of a scouting variant, as it were. It's basically the same thing, but with a larger sensor bay. I think it has this right here. He has the engineering station that allows it to kind of be used a little bit more. But yeah, it's effectively just kind of a Cutter with a larger scanning radius. And now with that, and a big spoiler. It's got the nice spoiler. All right, let's come over here and let's talk about the original the original Drake ship, the Cutlass. If you're asking in chat for questions, feel free to hold your questions until we get to the question and answer section. Oh, so this is the Buccaneer. All right. So let's go over here with the Buccaneer. Not prepared with my notes. So, the Buccaneer has a unique history because the Buccaneer is kind of the Swiss Army knife of Drake. When the Buccaneer was first built, which seems to be implied that it was built sometime in the 2930s or 2940s, because it's built after the Cutlass, the Caterpillar, and the Herald were built, its main purpose was to fill in the blanks for all of the other vehicles that Drake had. So it needed to be fast enough to escort a Herald. It needed to be small enough to be able to be maintained with, on the frontier, but also, fit with like kind of maintain security as well for the cutter or for the Caterpillar and the Cutlass, but also not do the same kind of roles. So it's designed to be a little bit more maneuverable, a little bit, still has the speed, and have a lot more firepower because it doesn't have to worry about anything else. So this was purpose built to stand toe to toe with any other light fighter, but at a Drake price. It is a little bit more expensive than some of its stuff at its own kind of class, which is kind of has a downside to it, but it does have a lot of firepower for what you're purchasing. With that, let's move over here to the Herald. Now, unfortunately, we don't know when the Herald was built. What we know is that it is a info runner, like one of the first major info runners of its type. It is a two-person info runner. There's two seats in there. For those who don't know what info running is, in the universe of Star Citizen, there is no faster than light communications. So any communication has to be sent through either drones, through the comms array system run by Asiato, or you give a message to a fast ship who will then run that message through a jump point faster than the comm arrays usually can make it, and more securely to the location. So you can think of them as part messenger ponies, part armored cars, because all the information that, say, from bank transfers may also go through info runners. So this is designed to work as a info runner to be able to run information, but it also can receive and transmit information as well. So it can also kind of be a sneaky spy ship if you need to. Again, designed like a lot of Drake ships. All these ships are designed to kind of complement one another, so that all you ever need is a Drake ship, and you can fill out all of the different roles that are needed, as well as fill in the weaknesses of some of those ships. Now let's go talk about the Corsair. Again, the Corsair doesn't have any lore. We don't know exactly when it was built, but we do know that it was likely built fairly recently. I don't think it tells us on here on the top. Yeah. This is likely one of the first entries into Drake from Andon Arden's regime. Remember, a lot of what Andon Arden was seeking to do was to distance Drake from its past, especially Jan Dredge and that horrible incident where Jan Dredge basically admitted that they sold to whoever they wanted to. With that, we have some of the first ones that come out are things like an update to the cutter with more Vulture stylings to them, and this exploration ship designed to compete with ships like the Carrack and the Constellation Andromeda. Now, obviously, this is no Carrack. It is very much a Drake ship through and through. But at the end of the day, it's pretty impressive for a Drake ship. Let's come on back and I'll show you a little bit about it. First of all, right here, as Bearman is showing, you actually have an elevator, which leads you not only down to the floor, to the ground when you're landed, but also to the midsection and to the roof. So you can go all the way to the roof with this if you wanted to. Then back here, we have a very large cargo bay, and if you look at the cargo bay, you might notice that it's fairly similar to the cutter. It looks very similar to the cutter because they're, again, designed probably around the same time. Unlike other Drake ships, this has a dedicated engineering bay, which is not too unusual, but it also has a dedicated crew quarters with 3 specific personal quarters, plus a shower, and then the captains has their own quarters up here at the front as well, combined with a defensive, two turrets. Captain has their own quarters, plus co-pilot and pilot seat. So a total of 4 crew members on board. It is fairly popular, especially for the exploration, its exploration purpose. Excuse me. Oh, goodbye. And I'm looking forward to hearing more about the history of how this ship was designed in the future, but sadly we don't have a lot. Now, let's go talk about the cutlasses. Come with me. As Omega is saying, yes, that is the Cuddy Explorer, the Cuddy Large Explorer version. The Herald is the Cuddy Small engine, and the Buccaneer is the Cuddy Fighter, with the Caterpillar being the Cuddy Long, and the Kraken being the Cuddy Extra Thick. I think it's the other side of the stuff, unless the Apex. Oh no, Apex Hall 5 has this over here, which is good. Let's head on to the Apex Hall 5. The Corsair may have been used for the Day of the Vara, but I don't think it was. It's not the ship that was in the Day of the Vara. All right, let's start with the black and work our way through. There's actually extensive lore behind all of the different variants of the cutlasses, but I'm just going to give you kind of the very basics because they all sort of they all kind of hit the same sort of themes. So the Cutlass Black, this is the DS1 Cutlass, the very first ever Cutlass ever made. Built for that Volksfighter competition, lost to what's known as I believe the Bearcat, or maybe the Wildcat. It's an Aegis design, which we've forgotten about altogether. And it's gone on to become one of the most popular ships ever designed by humanity. Thousands of these things have been built. Again, I talked about the controversy, but let's come back here and I'll show you why this ship is so beloved. So first off, this version of the Cutlass, if you look in the back here, look up, you see yourself a tractor beam. So this is a ship which is designed for frontier militia work that has a tractor beam. It also has 6 drop seats on either side and enough space for, I believe, 16 SCU cargo on either side of this, or other kind of cargo if you need to. Then you come on here to the center console. The crew quarters over here has space for 2 beds and 3 operators if need be, plus plenty of storage and some gun racks. Now you notice that there is no toilet here. That's because this is not designed as a long-range ship. It is a short-range kind of patrol ship. There's no toilet, there's no amenities. It's designed to go out, do its job, and come back home. And it does its job very well. It's still one of the most popular ships in game for that reason. The thing that makes it very popular with pirates is these two side entrances. Now, these make great EVA hatches to escape and go out into space as need be, or even when you're landing. But they also make great places for you to disgorge from to go take care of ships that maybe other people aren't so amenable to you. So it's pretty well. Let's go over to the Red now. Whoop. So the Cutlass Red is the first variant of the Cutlass that was built. And it was built, again, directly in response to the issues with the Cutlass being seen as this horrible, horrible pirate ship. So the Cutlass Red was built specifically to be a rescue ship. It has sensors on it. It has med bays inside. You can come on back here. We can kind of see a little bit of it. It even is able to keep some of its cargo bay. Now, the uniqueness about this is that this is the first ship of its class to have an auto dock. These two med beds are known as auto docks. These were cutting edge when they were first installed in a Cutlass Red, and outside of hospitals, and I don't even think hospitals at the time, not many people had these. Not many ships had these sorts of things, and it was only later in the 30th century when this became the standard for all ships. But the Cutlass Red had it the very beginning. In fact, a terrorist attack on the council, the governor's council, so the leaders, the government of Berea, was thwarted because a Cutlass Red, an experimental Cutlass Red, was nearby and was able to respond to the attack and save the lives of several members of the governor's council. That resulted in the Cutlass Red becoming famous for its life-saving capabilities, and it is the standard life-saving, standard ambulance in the entirety of the UAE as a result. Originally, the Drake actually tried to sell these to the UAE military, who refused, because Drake and the UAE military don't see eye to eye very well. But after the standardization of the Cutlass Red as a ambulance ship for the UAE, the military did actually buy several Cutlass Reds, but mostly for like ambulance work on base. So these aren't being used with combat; they're used for kind of work inside of a base if you need to take them to like a local hospital or something like that. It's also the standard by which, in terms of metrics, which the Endeavor Hope class uses. Apparently, the Endeavor's cargo bay or hangar bay can carry two of these at any given time. So this is like probably the most impactful variant of the Cutlass that has ever existed because of its unique innovation of using these auto docks. Now let's head out and get to the other ones. Now this is the variant of the Cutlass called the Cutlass Blue. Let's head to the back and I'll show you. This is the police and bounty hunter variant. Now, there isn't a lot of lore for the Blue. But the Blue is a more recent addition compared to the Red. And as you can see, it's designed specifically to kind of counter the whole accusations that Drake is only a pirate manufacturer. And this is designed for use for public security as well as bounty hunters to go out and use effectively. It has probably the highest amount of cargo capacity in terms of these cargo bays. In terms of prisoner transports, it can hold up to 12 prisoners at any given time safely, and can be delivered pretty easily from here. So this is pretty standard. A lot of police forces, especially local police forces, use the Cutlass Blue, and there are advocacy groups that do use the Cutlass Blue as well because of how good it is. the Cutlass is just a very effective tool and a very effective platform for these sorts of things. And it's proven itself time and time again because it's easy to build, easy to maintain. There's lots of parts for it. And it's pretty rugged for what it needs to do. It's not very safe, but again, it works. All right, let's go over here to the worst variant of the Cutlass.
The Cutty Steel!
Oh, there is no lore behind the steel, except for it is the most Drake ship that has ever draked. So, in the tradition of Drake ships being very, very utilitarian, this is the dropship variant of the Cutlass. It can hold, I believe, up to 12? There's 6 plus 10, so you're 16 people total. It can hold up to 16 people for dropships, plus it also has 3 mounted guns. It has an additional back-mounted gun and a top turret, as well as the pilot. So the thing is gunned out with lots of drop seats into it. Yeah, it's. I think this one's probably the most recent one. It's likely been built in the 2940s or 2950s. But it's built in results. Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot. There's 2 on either side, so it's actually 6 mounted guns. So with that, let's head over to the Vulture, which actually does have some more lore. So this is going to be a very brief one. If you want to know more about the Vulture, I actually did a complete breakdown of the ship in its own video. But the briefest kind of breakdown of the Vulture is that the Vulture was built around the early the early 30th century, but it was actually built earlier. So this is an experimental Cutlass. It's gonna sound weird, but this is in fact an experimental Cutlass. You hop on here so I can hop on up. So this was built not for salvage, but for VTOL. So this was a Cutlass which was built specifically to test out unique configurations of VTOL, and then an incident happened with a MISC hull ship, I believe a MISC hull C, which disappeared mid-flight. And a big kind of public inquiry came in about where this ship went, because the ship was not only carrying large quantities of ore, but it was also carrying rare artwork when it disappeared. And eventually that ship was found, but it was found to be in a very tight quarters surrounded by rocks and in a very radioactive location. So it was very difficult for you to get there because you'd have to have a small enough ship that could pick through the opening and could still survive the intense radiation which it was residing in. And MISC decided to make a challenge of it by offering a significant award, I think like 1 billion credits, to the first person or group who could arrive at this place and then salvage the location. And Drake decided to take up this challenge. They took their experimental Cutlass because of its engines. They built a kind of a repair arm, like a salvage arm that could telescope out, and they used that to rescue the artwork. And not only did they rescue the artwork, they continued time after time to salvage the ship and even retrieved its black box, which was the original goal, was to retrieve the black box to give back to MISC so they would know what's going on. Now, Drake did also the most Drake thing ever. They retrieved the black box and gave it to MISC, and then MISC sued them because not only did they retrieve the black box, they accessed the black box and copied it all down for their own purposes, which MISC accused them of violating the clause. So MISC refused to pay them the money that they owed them and then sued Drake as a result. But Drake proclaimed innocence and then went on a whirlwind tour of this experimental Cutlass, and it was showed off at aerospace shows and all these other locations, kind of like as this famous ship that was able to rescue the this infamously difficult and infamously lost whole series ship. But after a few months, that sort of wore off, and another Cutlass attack, a brutal Cutlass attack, kind of, got Drake back in the hot seat again. So the ship was put into storage and kind of forgotten about until, I believe, 2930, when a reclaimer crew discovered a very old ship, like a ship that's like probably, I think the way it was a generational ship that had been lost, a generational colony ship, or just a colony ship, which had been infamously lost for hundreds of years. They found it, and as a result, once they claimed the salvage for it, because of how historical value it was, all of the crew members became millionaires overnight. Because of that, the salvage became the hot topic. Everyone thought that they could strike it rich with salvage. So Drake going, salvage. What do we got in salvage? Remembered that they had their experimental Cutlass that was a salvage ship, and then brought it back out. And they brought it back out and then sort of retooling it and reworking it. And then eventually, within about a couple years later, they came out with the Vulture, which was the first soloable salvage ship on the market. And they made a fortune off of it. And became very, 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 very popular. I believe some of the first, there's several early finds by Vultures, which increased the kind of salvage hype. And it's still one of the only soloable salvage ships on the market today. And it became like this kind of watershed moment where Drake started to lose its image because of this bad boy image, because of the Cutlasses, and started to become more of a everyman's industrial ship. And that is what Andon Arden has been really kind of focusing on with Drake, is to try to make it more appeal to the masses. That, the Cutlass, it's not the Cutlass that's the face of Drake. It's the Cutter, it's the Vulture, it's the Corsair, it's the Kraken. Those are the ones that he wants everyone to kind of pay attention to. All right, with that, let's go look at some of the future ships and some of the more ground-based ships. No, it wasn't the Artemis that they found. I don't remember the exact name. It's in the Jump Point magazine. So we'll see you later. All right. So the Dragonfly. The Dragonfly doesn't have much lore, though it is actually a snub fighter. It was built to kind of complement the Caterpillar, kind of after the Caterpillar had been released, but it was built specifically so it would fit not only in the Caterpillar, but the Cutlass Black. So, in general, this ship was designed to fill both the needs of a snub craft, but also the needs of a overland explorer or movement ship, or kind of like mover. It has 2 seats, which the back seat can also be replaced with I believe a cargo pod, a small, like a 1/8 SCU cargo crate. And then it's got 2 size 1 guns in the front, and also has size 0 shields. It's a hover vehicle. In fact, it's the Drake. This is one of the first open top racers to ever have been built. Pretty much all of the other racers have been in response to the Dragonfly. This is kind of like a peak of Drake's innovation right here. All right, let's go over to the Mule. All right. So the Mule was built as a accessory to warehouse and transport jobs. It's built to be able to handle 1 SCU cargo crates, and it's specifically designed to carry also some 1/8 SCU. I think it can carry 2 SCU cargo crates in the back and in the front, but in a sealed cabin. This means that this can operate in any environment as long as there's enough gravity for it. And it's small enough to fit into almost any vehicle, especially any Drake vehicle, that has a cargo bay. It's pretty new, only been released in 2952, as far as I know. But it's yet to have its full impact, but it has become fairly popular with cargo companies like Kovalex and, of course, like Voyager Direct as well. With that, let's move into the display where we see upcoming ships from Drake. Going to come over to the left first. There's only one. Meet the pride and joy, Andon Arden's masterpiece. Greenlit shortly after the arrival of Andon Arden to Drake. It's unsure if this was one of his ideas or if this was the idea of his predecessor that he took over. But the Drake Kraken is specifically designed to kind of shake the image of Drake as being the bad boy and pirate operating vehicle. It was built first in 2958 or 2948, and its variant version, the privateer, is being built directly here in Stanton. It's actually being built by Cousin Crows. They're the ones who are designing and building the privateer version of this. It's still yet to see the market, but it is. There's a lot of anticipation around it because it is the first capital ship by Drake, and allows for a lot of utility. There's internal bays for repair and for launch. It's got a flat top landing bay area which has gravity on it, which can hold 2 cutlasses and 4 buccaneers. It's got massive cargo bays and lots of storage for people and other materials as well. It is effectively a flying base or flying space station. With that, let's move over to the other manufacturers on the floor. I'll see you over there. Let's head over to the Argo, Consolidated Outland, Greycat, and Kruger. Remember to walk when we get into the actual elevator. Party hard here. We're going to the Zenith Hall. Go ahead and go in. I'll catch the next one. Zenith Hall. That's creepy. All right, come meet me out of here. Alrighty, it's time for the truncated version of each of these manufacturers. Welcome to the Small Manufacturers Hall. Call this Small Manufacturers because these are manufacturers that don't have a ton of actual ships available. In fact, Argo is probably the biggest one. But they do have a lot of lore because they're not all of these are not exclusively ship manufacturers. In fact, let's start with the oldest of the companies, founded in 2243. This is before there was even a UNE. So this is back when there was no, wasn't even a unified human government. The only company that's older than Argo is RSI themselves. So Argo was founded as Argo by Alana Redmond. Alana Redmond was a railroad worker who worked on the Trans-American Maglev line, which stretched from the top of Alaska all the way down to the bottom of South America. It went over several different countries, so each country was responsible for maintaining the track. But with by the 23rd century, space travel had become so efficient that people were just not using trains to transport cargo much anymore. And as a result, the maglev trains were becoming less and less efficient as the tracks were kind of being left to rot. But she grew up on the rails. Her mother was worked on the rails as well. She became an engineer, and during one incident, she noticed they stopped because the track needed to be repaired. She noticed a piece of kind of debris which had been followed, kind of made its way on the track, which had been welded to the track itself through the magnetic forces of the train, and realized that she could build a device that could automatically repair the track as it went along. She took some time off, worked with some people friends who had a private track, and kind of perfected the technology. She eventually quit her job and founded Argo, which stands for AR, which is her name, Alana Redmond, Go. It's just AR-Go. It became very successful. It became the standard for all maglevs to use her technology, which would automatically replace the tracks, or automatically repair the tracks as it went along, which sped up tracks, or sped up train deliveries, and also allowed for new technologies to use the old tracks. So new trains were beginning to be developed, which were faster and more efficient, which meant that trains weren't as fast as orbiting spacecraft or suborbital spacecraft, but they could be cheaper and nearly as fast. So instead of having it in a couple of minutes, you'd have it in a couple of hours, and at a greatly reduced cost compared to having to pay for all that quantum fuel and hydrogen fuel. So trains began to revitalize on Earth, and Argo began to buy newer companies that were struggling, and then convert them, helping them to create new ideas. Over time, Argo became the #1 train manufacturer on Earth, and they eventually exported their work to Mars. They built the first ever rail network on Mars, and even today, almost all rail networks in the UAE are built by Argo. But when these rail networks were working, they found that there's actually one small downside for Argo, which is that Argo was being slowed down by spaceships. They couldn't load their spaceships fast enough because they would get to the trains would get to their station, and they'd have to wait for traffic to come in and down, and to unload the trains and put them on, board them onto the ships, and then send the ships back up to orbit. So they needed something to solve this problem of the trains stopping and then getting brought up to the stations to be loaded onto larger ships and sent off. This was the creation of what's known as the Orbital Utility Vehicle, or OUV. Utility Vehicle, Orbital Utility Craft, OUC. And this basic ship was purchased from a struggling shuttle manufacturer, and kind of had them kind of build this out, and it became very popular. Now, it was only designed to pick up cargo and take it to orbit and back, but people loved them so much they began to modify them to do a variety of different jobs. and they were lasting well beyond their initial lifespan because people were doing their best to extend their lifespan. And when this happened, Argo decided, you know what? Let's revisit the OUC and see if we can make something that people wanted. And as a result, they created what's known as the Argo Multi-Purpose Utility Vehicle, or MPUV. We'll talk a little bit more about the MPUV, but this was the change that caused Argo to go to from what it was before to known as Argo Astronautics. And ever since then, Argo has been focusing on spaceships, specifically around ships that would be helping various logistical support, especially around spaceports and planets. Let's take a look at those on the floor, and then we'll go over to Kruger and learn a little bit more about that. So speaking of the MPUV, the secret to the MPUV's success is that the MPUV is simply the frame. So here we have the personnel and the cargo. So this is the cargo variant. You notice inside your side, you got like a nice little cargo grid, and you have a seat in the back. And with the personnel, if you go back here, you see there's a bunch of seats in the back. Now, what's the difference between these two? The module. The MPUV uses the standard cargo lock and latch systems that are used on things like their trains, and then imports that to different modules. So the MPUV can swap out modules to whatever it needs to be done. You can think of this as a Swiss Army knife. And there are modules which are rescue modules or other modules. They're really the sky's the limit, as long as it fits within the frame of the MPUV. So this became a very popular sort of framed vehicle chassis for the military. And the military uses Argo MPUVs on every single large capital ship from the Idris all the way up. There's always one attached to those larger ships for various other tasks, as well as rescue and other things like that. So, and you can see these all over the Empire. They're very common amongst unloading and loading craft. With that, let's go over here to some of the other ships which have come out since the MPUV's success, starting with the Mole. Now, we don't have a lot of information about the Mole, but the Mole is released in 2949. Part of the new generation of Argo ships as they began to really dive into ship design. Now, the MPUV were first developed in 2665. So there may be a lot of other ships we don't know about, but a lot of these ships are brand new. With the Mole being a kind of a step away from their usual side, where they're now working on kind of mining rather than logistical support. But this ship is designed to have 3 separate mining lasers on it, with a operator in this pilot seat as well, with almost double. No, not double, because there's like 3 for each, or for a prospector, right? So it has a lot of cargo capacity in terms of raw ore. So it's very effective on larger rocks, and it's one kind of disadvantage is that all of these boom arms, if you look at them, they're actually set out into space. So there's nothing here that actually protects the operator from the vacuum in space. So you don't have to use suits for them. All right, let's come over here to the raft. You can think of this as kind of like a mobile crane. The raft was designed to be used in areas with low to no logistical support. This ship was designed to arrive in an area, take cargo to an area, be able to land on the planet, and unload old cargo and load new cargo without a single logistical support from the planet itself. This is done by if you go back here, you can see a cargo, this distinct, right here, I believe is where it is. A distinct tractor beam, which can load and offload the cargo itself. But it can hold up to 3 32 SCU cargo pods. In fact, you see right here, if you look there, that little window, that window is for the operator to operate the kind of tractor beam. It's going to load and offload these things. Now let's go to the most recent addition, the SRV. Now, the SRV stands for the Standard Recovery Vehicle. I forgot to mention the RAFT stands for the Reinforced Advanced Transport, and the MOL stands for the Multi-Operator Laser Extractor. They're all acronyms. So the SRV is designed specifically as a tugboat. It can carry cargo, it can carry vehicles, it can carry ships. It has this gigantic back tractor beam, which is used to latch on and carry just about anything. And it's all soloable. It's designed to be used by a single person. So it has kind of a unique, it doesn't require a lot of people to be used. It's also designed to carry damaged ships and carry them back to a port to be able to be repaired, or to carry cargo from the surface all the way up to space, or even maneuver around vehicles. It has 10 SU of cargo space right here, but it also has an interior cabin and one single seat. So that is Argo. Let's move over here to Kruger and kind of go over Kruger's history. So Kruger was founded in 2558 on Boreas Magnus. That's right. Kruger was founded in the same city, or the same planet, as Drake Interplanetary's headquarters is. Now, originally, Kruger was simply a parts manufacturer. They built parts for any ships and eventually became a very important parts manufacturer for the UEE. Pretty much every ship in the UEE today has Kruger parts in it. We're talking like bolts, screws, panels, that said, and so on and so forth. Now, as Magnus began to decline in popularity, as it began to slip into more outlaw activity, as the Navy eventually left, Kruger began to have problems with shipments. While they originally said they would never wanted to leave the system. Oh, I forgot to mention, the reason why it's called Kruger is because it was founded by Ozell Kruger, who created Kruger Intergalactic as her the name of her company, for parts company kind of thing. She's a former Navy pilot, I believe. Now, while they wanted to stay in Berea as long as they couldn't. Eventually, RSI basically said that you needed to deal with these outlaw problems, or you need to leave, because there was a major shipment of RSI parts that was being taken from Berea to RSI facilities. It was ambushed by pirates and completely destroyed or captured. So they eventually had to leave Berea, and their current headquarters is actually in Cascom on Castra, which is an old military base, where they've become one of the major manufacturers there. Now, fairly recently, in the 29th century and the 30th century, Kruger began to joke. There was a joke that's at one of the board meetings, which one of the members said they made all the parts for a gun except for the gun itself. This joke was first taken as a joke, and then they began to think about it and thought, why don't we make guns? So Kruger began to make Gatling guns, which you can see over here at the very front of the P-52. This right here is a Kruger Gatling gun. The first Gatling gun they created was known as the Tiger Strike, and it became the standard weapon on the Aegis Avenger line, especially for the advocacy, after the Avenger was retired from military service. Now, the second part was the idea that because they made these weapons, they also made a bunch of ship parts. Made pretty much all the ship parts in the UEE, or most of them. So they also decided, why don't we try to make a ship? So with their partners at RSI, they managed to convince RSI to let them build a snubcraft for the latest generation of constellations, which became what we know today as the P-52 Merlin. These snubcrafts are It's purpose-built to fit inside a cradle, which is at the bottom of the constellation. They're very short range. They have no quantum drives, but they do have weapons. They have 2 size 1 guns and 1 size 2 Gatling gun in the nose, though the Gatling gun is ballistic, so it kind of runs ahead of things pretty fast. They also made a racing variant for their luxury variant of the constellation known as the Phoenix. This replaces the nose gun with 2 size 1 guns, so it has a total of 4 size 1 guns on the side, which I prefer personally. But this is very fast and very maneuverable. It's one of the cheapest and affordable racing ships that is in the market today. With that, let's head over to the next one. I got to figure out where the next one is. Give me a moment. Check real quick. Come with me. Come with me. We're walking and we're walking. I believe it's Zenith 2, but we're going to double check. Yeah, let's go to the Zenith 2. We're going to go talk about Consolidated Outland. Bremen's finest. Let's go. Follow me. Right here we see the MPUV over here to the right. Very valuable part. And there's the Drake Mule. Come with me. Now, meet the newest manufacturer on the block, Consolidated Outland. Let's start with the Alpha. So the Alpha's over here, I think. So let's go over here with the Alpha. That's the Beta. I don't have the Mustang. Founded sometime before 2944, I believe in the 2950s, or 2940s, 2940. The Consolidated Outland is founded by its kind of eccentric CEO, Silas Kerner. Silas Kerner is the son of the latest generation of the Kerner family, which basically has run has run Rytif on Bremen and Stalford, city of Stalford, since Bremen's founding. He was a billionaire by the time he was 13. And he loved space exploration. So when he came of age, he took his incredible family wealth and as well as personal wealth and invested in a company that he wanted to use to bring Bremen out of the agricultural rut it was in. His home system had been running low on its influence for a very long time. Bremen was once the breadbasket of the empire and was slowly becoming not owned by Bremen anymore, but owned by Terra. So he wanted to try to break with tradition and help revitalize Bremen as a tech hub. And so doing this, he created Consolidated Outland. Now, the first version of Consolidated Outland specifically sold conversion kits. If you've heard of the F7A Mark II conversion kit for the F7C, that was sold by Consolidated Outland. They also did spoiler attachments for the Freelancer and chrome trim for the Aurora CL. These various different versions were very popular and got the company off the start. But the one thing that Silas Kerner had always hated is the Aurora. He felt that the Aurora was the most the ugliest thing he had ever seen. He was very passionate about space travel in the sense that he hated anything he thought was stupid. He hated the Gladiator with a fiery passion, felt that the 300 series was an insult to space travel, and always wanted to make a ship that he felt would dethrone the Aurora as the starter ship, the basic choice for your average UAE citizen or person or a civilian. So to that end, he created the Mustang series in 2944. The Mustang was released in 2944 and was released with all four variants at the same time. This is the Mustang Alpha. This is the basic starter package, which comes with Star Citizen games, one of the basic starter packages that comes with the game. It has a cargo bay in the back, and it has a one-seat pilot. You see over here, it actually has two size 2 mounted, or two size 1 mounted, I think. There's 2 guns in the front and two guns on the wings, which are... two size 2s in the front and 2 size 1s in the wings. Yeah, that's right. Over here, we have the militia variant, which has stealth armor, paint and armor, designed to make it a little bit tougher, called the Mustang Delta. It still has the front 2 mounted size 2 cannons, 2 size 1 wing mounts, but it also has bespoke rocket pods made by Hurston Dynamics, designed to kind of be more militia, kind of to take the role of the militia fighter from the Buccaneer or from the Cutlass. Let's move over here and look at the other variants. So this is the Gamma. This is the racing variant, which includes more advanced intakes, but it loses the front gun mounts. It still has 2 size 1 guns on the wings, though. It is designed to be maneuverable and fast for its class. It's one of the only starter racing ships we have. And lastly, the boy that they killed. This is my child that they murdered in front of me, the Beta. Now I say this, because it used to be known as the Bang Stang. Because if you looked in the back, it's the only way you can enter it is through the front here. But if you exit out the back of the seats, you can go into a living quarters. The only ship that has the only Mustang that has cargo is the Alpha, because the Beta here in the back has a living quarters, which used to have this very nice aesthetic. It had what we used to call the Netflix and chill couch. It's a place where you went with your partner and you snuggled up and you watched something cool. It was very shag and wagon meets muscle car, and so it earned the nickname the Bang Stang. And then the ship went through a redesign. And instead of having a nice aesthetic, it has prison aesthetic inside. So, but this is the Explorer, designed for longer ranges and for habitation. It's the only Mustang with a bed, for instance. All right. Now let's go talk about the Ugly Duckling Strange edition, the Consolidated Outland Nomad. So the Nomad is kind of been developed, began development in 2942. This was actually before the release of the Mustang, and it was originally called the Manta, the Multi-Crew Accessible New Transport, led by a designer named Dr. Charlotte Rowland. The original version of the Nomad was the competitor to the Constellation, to give you the kind of size of it. It was meant as the first step as a subsidiary that focused on rental spacecraft. So this was originally supposed to be a spacecraft for rentals. But by 2944, the Manta would be a large multi-crew ship built off the shelf with off-the-shelf components, requiring only a small central cabin to have any real construction take place. It cost them only about 275,000 UEC to make, but it would eventually Kruger Silas Kerner would add more differences, and kind of this sort of morphed from being what it originally designed to be to becoming what we see today in terms of the Nomad. It was also designed to be released with the other ship, which we'll talk about here in the future, the Hover Quad. They were designed to be released together. Dr. Rowland went off to become to have her own rental company, which she used exclusively the Nomad to use for. But it's kind of a Franken ship that eventually morphed into what we see today, released in 2950. It has an interior cargo bay or interior living quarters, which supports one person and a single operator. It also has that wonderful, wonderful thing of a tractor beam at the top to be able to load and unload stuff, and a exterior cargo bay that's exposed to the elements, but is able to hold, vehicles or other cargo bays. So, with that, let's move on down to the next and last kind of manufacturer, Greycat Industrial.
What is with the hover pads on those ships?
The hopper pads? What do you mean? Oh, the hover pads?
It's a very unique. I only really see it on that ship and that ship alone. And
yep, it's only designed for that. I don't think it was. I think it was. That's one of the additions that Silas Kerner wanted to change to because he thought it was cool. Almost made it. Let's go down and look at the cover quad first, then we'll look at the rest of Greycat and talk a little bit about Greycat. So let's not go quite here. Let's gonna head over to the other side and we'll do the Greycat or the hover quad. All right, as I said, the hover quad was built at the exact same time as the Nomad. It was built as a kind of sort of add-on to the Nomad to be the vehicle that would be able to work with the Nomad. Built with the same technology in mind, the hover technology. It is a small vehicle which is designed to fit in a lot of different spaces, but also to go over land pretty easily. That is the hover quad. Now let's go talk about Greycat.
Short and sweet.
All right, Greycat. This is another very old manufacturer. One of the oldest. Let's get back here on this tire. Oh, missed it. Missed it by that much.
They make the best buggies. Definitely not an explosion machine right here.
So, Greycat was founded in 2337 on Mars. The company itself was founded by a man by the name of Otis Broussard. His goal was to make safety equipment for miners on Mars, and especially for groups that were doing extrastellar mining. He had a daughter named Pippa. She went to the University of Redder as one of the first students to go to the University of Redder, which had just recently been founded. Along that, she met a man by the name of Reuben Pardue. Reuben Pardue was a genius. He specifically focused on geohacking technology, which was cutting edge of how to terraform basically impossibly to terraform worlds, especially very cold worlds. And his expertise got the attention of Titiana Terraforming, who wanted to try to terraform the planet of Uriel. The general idea of how to fix the planet was to effectively reignite the core. So they built many extended tunnels on the planet to try to reach the core of the planet and reignite it, and to warm up the entire world. He was very gifted, but he was also very much had a caustic tongue. He had a short temper with everybody around him, especially his superiors, and earned himself the nickname of being smart, but also an asshole. And eventually, because he was so good at what he did, he eventually got a hold of, became part of the underground operations hub, kind of operations whose job was to kind of maintain the mines. And part of his job, because he was maintaining these mines, he came up in his free time with various different ideas that would help him improve his job, including things like new armor designs that would protect miners better, new tools which would help make it easier for him to for people to mine, and vehicles to be able to get in and out of mines safely. One of those, the tool that was designed for mining, would eventually become known as the Pyro RYT multi-tool. Same Pyro multi-tool we use today. Obviously, ours is a newer versions, but he was the original person who came up with it. Now, on May 23rd, 2831, a mining disaster collapsed part of the underground operations hub and trapped him in the rubble. He was barely able to be rescued, but he lost his arm. His left arm had to be amputated, and 37 of the people he was in charge of died. He was shattered after this happened, blaming himself for the disaster, thinking he could have solved the problem and that he was responsible for all 37 deaths. He was offered basically the pick of the litter for replacement for an arm, but refused to get one, seeing it as his penance for messing up. He went into a deep depression and was eventually left Titiana Terraforming. After he left Titiana Terraforming, he ran into his old friend Pippa Broussard, who offered him to come work for her because she wanted to help him out. Pippa was also looking to expand away. She had recently gained control of her father's company, though her father was still on the board. She was the CEO. And so she used the recent terraformation success of Croshaw to open up the first Greycat Industrial office and factory off of Mars, so that she could use that excuse to get away from her father and the prying eyes of the board. And so she needed someone of Pardue's character and status to head up the operations at the location, which he refused, but he did accept to become an engineer under her. There, he gave her his ideas for the Pyro multi-tool, what would become known as the Reily armor, and what we know today as the personal transport vehicle, or the PTV. These, first off, being the Reily armor, was very successful. It was armor that was designed specifically to protect miners and would have saved his arm and many of those miners' lives if they had been available when he was during his operations. The multi-tool became so successful, it became a victim of its own success. They had to fight multiple lawsuits because people kept ripping them off and making their own versions of the Pyro multi-tool. And it became such a money drain for them to try to keep this up, to fight for their patents, because they literally couldn't keep up with demand. So competitors were coming up with their own versions. Throughout all this time, Pardue was offered many jobs, but refused to take any of them because he didn't want to be in charge of anything. He wanted people to be able to look over his work. And he would eventually pass away, still with a lot of his ideas unseen. In fact, we'll talk a little bit about some of his ideas, which are over here to the right, the PTV. So this is the last work of Ruben Pardue, the personal transport vehicle. Now, originally, this vehicle had a roof, and that roof was reinforced with metal to protect it against mine collapses. The idea of this vehicle was to be small enough to carry 2 miners and tough enough to be able to survive a mine collapse and fast enough to try to outrun that collapse. So that's why it's very small. It can fit into most mine shafts at the time. Now, when it was first being built, the people who were working on the factory floor were taking these vehicles and driving them all up and down the factory floor, having a blast. That's when Greycat Industrial realized that they didn't really have a mining cart on their hand. They had a personal kind of buggy. So they removed the heavy roof and resold it as a kind of personal transport, and it became the most popular personal transport vehicle in the Empire. And still is one of the most popular kind of transports. It's pretty decent off-road, but it can go a lot of different places, and it's entirely, I believe, entirely electric, so it can go some pretty distances with its smaller engine and such. It's not very powerful, but it gets where you need to go.
Was this not the buggy that was in the hangars back when we could only access ships in the hangars?
Yes, this is the first vehicle in Star Citizen, the first working vehicle in Star
I
Citizen.
knew it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember it. It was a nightmare to drive.
It still is. All right, from there, let's go to the Steve, the STV. What does the STV stand for again? It stands for Sport Terrain Vehicle. There's not a lot of lore behind this, though it was built in 2952. And it's obviously developed specifically for kind of utility crafts. You can think of this as a all-terrain version of the PTV, kind of an upgraded version of what we would see with the PTV. But it also has one little cool thing. If you can come here in the back, I can get here in the back. I don't think I can access the back area. It just offers me to rent it. If anyone can get us, you should be able to open up the back here and actually put in two different, in the trunk, you can put two 1/8 SCU cargo containers into it. So allows it for a little bit more of a kind of a transportability. Now, here is the Rock. Now, I'm going to go over this a little bit because the Rock has a bit of an in-depth lore behind it. So, during the late 27th century, there was a revolution in miniaturization. Lots of complex technologies had begun starting to get smaller, specifically around laser extractors, which had been the standard means of mining for a very long time. Now, initially, you had to use very caustic chemicals along with these laser extractors to be able to get your raw resources out. But as time went on, these became better and better. So, originally, as these sort of technologies began to come to fruition, Greycat, being a mining company, decided that they were going to take this to another level. And originally they took the personal transport vehicle, the PTV over there, and they slapped a mining arm to it with a bigger trunk. And it didn't do well. Eventually they decided they were going to kind of make something that was more personal based. At the time, most mining groups was done by big, large companies, but Greycat felt that they could open up a market to small personal mining vehicles to increase, their funds. But they also believed that this was the future of mining. This is around the same time as it's about 100 years later, we'd really see the rise of this in the Prospector with Project Cold Boot by MISC. But this specifically began to be developed as what was known as the ROCK, the Rock. Though they dropped the K because they thought that calling it the Rock was too cute. So originally it had a fully enclosed cabin and was designed to be used with 2 operators. And originally it was supposed to be released in 2704 at the Terra Agriculture and Mining Exposition. However, the company itself had built the Rock in 2 different forms, the cabin and the laser extractor. The laser extractor being the secondary seat, which would operate the laser extractor. Unfortunately, both teams didn't talk with one another. Oh, my camera went out. I'm going to turn the camera off for now, and we'll just kind of hang out. Yeah, it's too hot in here. Yeah, just do this for you. There we go. So unfortunately, the both teams weren't talking with other very well, so they weren't actually able to get to what they needed to do. So when everything seemed to be on the verge of failure, when no one was working and everything, all of the kind of stuff was leading up, we had 6 months left. They decided that they were going to split the project into two again. The work was divided with two projects. The Rock, which became a rush effort to save the investment by producing a working mining vehicle, and what would the original design, which would be known as the Rock DS, which was a longer gestating effort to complete the original two-person design. They wanted the original suspension, that's they built design, but opted for a fire support requirement entirely instead of a closed cabin where the crew would work shirt sleeves. So they kind of cut edges, cut corners, and removed for the original Rock, and this enclosed cabin became open, while the DS would eventually become this closed cabin design. So you can think of the DS as the original design of what they wanted, and they went with the Rock as a temporary measure to succeed. Luckily for Greycat, the original Rock became very popular amongst the people and allowed for enough sales to stimulate the economy, or stimulate the bottom line of Greycat, but also to stimulate the desire for personal mining, for small individual mining. Slowly, the DS was also released, and eventually it was released a couple of years after the release of the original Rock. Now, modern Rock and the Rock DS use what's known as the standard laser aperture. The first ones still used chemical-based systems, which were very bad for the environment. These were developed shortly afterwards, and they all use the same sort of adapter that just simply use both tractor technology and laser technology for extraction. All right, let's move on out to the last part. The ships which are yet to come.
Did you say that
What's
the
up?
Rock was made before or after the Prospector? Because
Before.
I heard that the Prospector. Okay, so that's okay. Huh.
Yeah. The Pioneer. So with a new revitalization in colonization, which had happened in the 2940s, Consolidated Outland decided to take advantage of this and build their first major large ship, which became known as the Pioneer. This is basically a mobile factory. It's designed to fly out to locations and build massive structures, parts for massive structures that are allowed to be placed for a variety of different options or different purposes. It's still under construction. It still hasn't been completed yet, but it is effectively like I said, a flying factory. If you do purchase them, they right now they also come with UEE land claim beacons, which allows you to claim a piece of land in UEE space if you want as well. With all of that, let's head over to the question and answer, because I've just been talking for a long time and my camera's been suffering. So let me turn the camera back on here in a moment.
I find it kind of weird that Consolidated Outland makes a bunch of fighters and then nothing in the middle, and then it's just the massive factory ship.
That's just kind of how they are right now. They're very young. They're probably only about 13 years old as a company. All right. Get back on. All right. If you have any questions, let me know in chat or here live. Any questions about Drake, Argo, Greycat, Consolidated Outland, Kruger? Question: what ship do you wish you had more lore on? The Herald and the Corsair probably would like more stuff on that. A lot of the Drake ships don't have a lot of lore. Do you have the camera? It's just gets hot in my room and I don't have any ventilation. So. Can players visit different manufacturers' shipyards in the game or now in the future? Yes, you can visit Crusader shipyards right now. You can see them. It's on Providence platform. There's some evidence. You can see some of them, but you don't see like ships coming off the simulator or anything. Question, did you notice the sign that said the Rock DS instead of DS? A DC instead of DS? Oh no, it's supposed to be DS. Consolidated Outland is CIG. They don't have a big portfolio. They're just going by big right off the jump. Question, will the MPUV modules be removable and interchangeable? Yes. So you should be able, the MPUV is just the MPUV. The versions you have right now are just the MPUV with those modules. But eventually you will likely be able to remove those modules and swap them out for other modules.
I did miss the Caterpillar part, and I was going to ask, what is with the massive antennas on the front? Why are they so big?
Those are sensors. Those are parking sensors designed to see how far you are, because you can't see that side as a pilot. It lets you see how close you are to any station area. That's at least the original idea. Question, weren't the cutting meant to have tractor beams in the front of the ship and not in the back? Yes, at some point, but that's been changed. Is there a lore story of a Drake ship being used by a hero of the UE or only pirates? Not that I know of, but Drake ships are used by a variety of people, not just pirates. They get the reputation for pirates. They're not used by the military, so. Question, how large is the Pioneer exactly? Idris size, because that seems like it's huge. Let me look up the actual statistics for you. The Pioneer is 200 meters long with a width of 125 meters and height of 30 meters. I believe the Idris is 100 meters, so it's about twice the size of an Idris. So I could be wrong with that. I think that I may be thinking of the Polaris. Oop. The Idris M is 242 meters, so it's only 42 meters shorter than an Idris. It's about the same size as an Idris. A little bit shorter, but yeah. Double the size of a Perseus, yeah. What are the additional 2 pads of the SRV that aren't used? Bumpers? I think they're bumpers, yeah. I don't know what they are. Question, was the Kraken ever considered for UEE service? No. UEE and Drake do not have a good relationship.
I believe Drake started DefenseCon because of the UEE's hatred of Drake, wasn't it?
They never were invited to DefenseCon, even though Drake makes the red, which the UEE uses, and the Vulture, which the UEE military uses as well. Now, they don't use them in active combat, but... and Drake was never invited, so they created DefenseCon as a way of kind of spiting them, so... Ooh. Question. Can ships be refueled and rearmed from the pads on the Kraken? I believe so, but I don't know that for sure. Are there any gold standard Drake ships? Not that I know of, no. Doesn't the UEE use the Herald also? Possibly. I don't remember for that one. There's not a lot of lore for the Herald. Does the UEE have any equivalent to the Kraken? Like a cargo, like an escort carrier or a small carrier? Not really. The closest might be the Pegasus, but the Pegasus its lore is very questionable right now. Question, is there going to be the Argo graph model with the closest closet cargo space with the ramp access? I don't think so, no. Not with closed. It's an exterior. It's similar to a whole ship where it has most of its cargo in the exterior. Has Drake made any ships for other company collaboration like Aegis? Not that I know of, no. Cracking landing space is exposed, so it could easily be destroyed during combat. That is true. Though it does have the shield over it, but, you know. Corsair's gold standard? Possibly. Question, will Drake have a ship for every purpose? Possibly. It is Drake. Can you please stop harassing the poor guy in the middle? The guy who's freaking out right here? I'm not harassing him. They're all just, like, looking at him. Question. Why are they writing so much lore now? When Star Citizen releases, will they have to rewrite the entire lore to make it realistic? No. The lore that they're creating is the larger kind of context lore. Most of the lore that you won't ever really notice in the game. That might have some impact on some backgrounds of some characters or some slight events, but none of the stuff really is going to be that important. So, for instance, like the UEE as a government exists, though a lot of the details about the UEE are still kind of new to, are still kind of vague. Because they don't want to go too in depth because they want to have to write themselves in a corner. The only real changes that might happen is because of things like could you all stop messing with these kids, these people? It's kind of distracting. So yeah, no. And it's not realistic. The lore is never supposed to be realistic. I'm going to have to use this line, but it's a space game with bird aliens and World War II dogfighting. Star Citizen's not meant to be realistic. It's meant to be realistic for its own lore. It was never meant to be realistic. Question. Argo trains on the pledge store and laying down railroads when? Soon, TM. Is the Bengal a carrier? Yes, but it's a super carrier. Wasn't a Nomad supposed to be hovering as a Nomad? Was a Mustang supposed to be hovering as Nomad? No, it landed on its wings originally. Question. In lore, UEE capital ships use MPUVs for cargo. With the cargo space capital ships being so huge, wouldn't the Argo raft make more sense? The Argo raft wouldn't fit into all the ships in the UEE. You can think of it as more as like a porter ship designed to go back and forth from smaller ships. It's not designed to refuel the entire, resupply the entire ship. Just take small like mail and other things to and from. But it also can be used for rescue if you need to. So just like a little utility ship. Are there going to be small electric scooter things or similar to use instead of walking? Not a clue. Bengal's a super battle carrier. It's whatever CIG wants to call it, but it's basically a carrier. Doesn't matter lore-wise when a ship is made versus when we get it. If it isn't made until 2980, can it be released before? They'll change the lore if they have to. They're never going to write a ship that's released at a certain time in the far future unless they absolutely know it's going to be. Everything's going to be released at a certain point. What's the point of Argo Raft? It's a huge ship for a laughable 32 SCU containers. Ships twice as small can carry twice as much cargo and unload it with tractor beams too. Yes and no. Like, which ship can carry, what is it? I think the only one that might be able to do it is the Zeus, which can carry 128 SCU versus the 96 SCU that the Raft does. But you still have to get out of the ship and unload it, or you have to open up the ship and kind of do some stuff with it. So you have to access a cargo bay. The idea of the Raft is to be able to load and unload without leaving the ship. Yeah, and it's smaller than the Zeus. So. What's your next stream like this? Not meant to be realistic. What the fuck are they bothering to create control surfaces in atmospheric flight? Because it's designed to be as realistic as they want it to be. But just because it's not a one-to-one sim doesn't mean it's not going to It doesn't mean it's arcade. And just because it's doing some arcadey things doesn't mean it's not trying to be sim. It's trying to strike a balance between the two. At the end of the day, they wanted to make it fun, but challenging. That's why the sim elements come in. I think a lot of people kind of hurt themselves when they think of this Star Citizen as DCS in space, or Destiny, or whatever, or Tarkov. It's not going to be any of that. It's just going to be Star Citizen. It's always meant to be. When's the next stream like this? Tomorrow. Tomorrow at 3 p.m. Eastern is when we're going to do the next tour, but we'll get set up at about 2 p.m. Eastern at twitch.tv/TheAstroPub. What was the unique group that modified the Cutlass, and what systems are those guys at? They're called, I think it's just Shipjackers, but I believe they're in Odin. So. Question, what happened to the UTV? Concept art was showed at the time STV's release, and there's been no mention of it since. Not a clue. They originally said that they wanted to do the UTV within the year, and that's just disappeared. It carries 32 SCU containers, so 96 SCU. Ow. Stop throwing stuff at me, and it's actually starting to hurt. Does Drake have a planned ground vehicle? It has 2 ground vehicles. It has the Dragonfly and the Mule. But when Star Citizen releases, the backstory of humanity will be obsolete. Heck, we might even have Apex Predator PTV by then. So? I don't know how you're saying why the backstory of humanity is going to be obsolete. Star Citizen is its own universe. It's already obsolete. Like, the idea of having dogfights, World War II dogfights in space, is not realistic in any way, shape, or form. I think you're worried about something else there, buddy. Lickupton asks, question, which manufacturer on display today is your favorite in terms of design and lore? Drake. That's why I'm wearing this. I usually wear a suit. This is what I'm wearing today. Will we ever get a Drake tank? Man, I don't know, but I hope so. Can you fit a rock into the Cutlass Red model? I don't think so. I don't think it's big enough. Wait, the fighting in Star Wars isn't realistic? Yeah, now you've actually hurt me. Please stop throwing that stuff at me. Let's see. You might be very different at different stage IRL in 2900. They don't. I'm not going to stop answering. You're asking the same question. The answer is because they wanted to. That's why. It's a story. It's a universe that they've crafted based off of what they wanted to. They wanted to make it in the 30th century. It's the 30th century. You don't like the time period, then you don't like the lore. That's simple. Don't stop trying to make it think it's bad because it doesn't fit your own desire of what it should be. It is what it is. All right, I'm going to move over everything else to the question answers on Twitch and YouTube. Thank you for everyone who's joined up live. We'll be back here live tomorrow around the same time. Oh, you're making the joke about it's going to release in 2900. It's a joke. I didn't get it. I'm too tired and too thick-headed for that. But there's enough people that I've heard that have kind of made that case. It's like, well, it doesn't make any sense that it's in 2900. We would be more advanced or whatever. It's like, who cares? Question, will the Cutter Scout replace the Terrapin? As the Terrapin is a single-use ship without cargo space, but about the same size. Terrapin is much better. It's always going to be much better than the Scout. It's more armored, probably has longer range. It's two-person rather than, well, so is the Scout, but almost certainly the Terrapin's going to beat the Scout. It's just the Scout's going to be as cheap Terrapin. Okay, now I have to ask, what is it about the Drake that you like so much? So this is going to sound very weird, but Drake is corrupt as shit. They care not for anything. They are horrible. They are terrible. They are corrupt. They do not care about anything but the bottom line profit, and they are incredibly good at making cheap spaceships. But in the process of their chasing of absolute economic bliss, being absolutely ruthlessly capitalistic, they also happen to help a lot of people out. So I like the weird dichotomy of this ruthless capitalist organization that, by being so ruthless and capitalistic, actually is revitalizing an entire planet and actually helping a lot of people out because they're being so ruthless and capitalistic. It's like they accidentally lead into helping the people. Who's corrupt? Aegis? I mean, all of the companies are corrupt. Citizen, dude, Scott, you come in and say the same stuff, and it's like, who cares? It's a nightmare. Like me up when it works. I'm glad you're watching, but dude, you don't have to. You can come back when it's when it's better off, dude. It's better for everybody. Does the Pyro RV RYT multipool have a connection to the pyrotechnic amalgamations and the Pyro system? Not that I know of. It was originally created by Greycat Industrial, so. I don't know why, just one of those naming conventions again. CIG bad at naming things. Drake equals accidental heroes? To a degree, yeah. It's similar to Kastak. They're just so ruthless in their capitalistic desire that they accidentally help people. Like, they helped overthrow a dictator. It's like the Kastak did. They're like, we did it. Somehow. We accidentally won. We accidentally freedoms. Will we ever see a Drake making something bigger than the Kraken? Probably not, just because CIG doesn't like to make any ships that's bigger than that. They made the, obviously they're making bigger ships, but those ships, they're having a hard time finding the fun in them. Like, they have a hard time thinking about all of the roles and actions that a players would be able to do on a Javelin. That's like 80 people, possibly, so. But but how many human-sized slaves does a caterpillar fit in? I love that line. Okay, I'm still stuck on the Nomads hover pads. Did we get hover pad tech from the Tavarans or some other alien race? No, we developed it ourselves independently. Because the only other ship I know that has hover pads is the Prowler. We could have gotten it from them. I don't think there's any references that we got hover tech from them. But we have hover tech from Drake. Used hover tech first, I believe, as far as I know. So, is Drake going to make a mining ship? Maybe. 80 plus. Jav needs a support fleet to take out the bombers that would cripple it otherwise. Yeah. We did steal their stuff, yeah. So how's Drake's engines the fastest, but like build like cheap scrap metal? It's because they're lightweight and have low armor. Buccaneer's twice as lighter than a single engine F7C. To a degree, like Drake effectively funnels all of their designs into three different aspects: speed, weapons, and ease of maintenance. Those are the three things they really focus on when they design anything. So Drake ships go fast in a straight line. They punch like the right hand of God, and they're very easy to fix. But you ask them to turn, you're asking too much. They don't turn well, and they are currently heavily reliant on shields. I think eventually they're supposed to have more armor on them, and they're paper thin when it comes to their whole strength. So that's just kind of where they kind of come from. Question, do you think we could see a salvage vessel from Argo, or do you think that might not be their industry focus? We might. The Mole is a weird kind of offshoot from Argo, and I think that was made before the real decision to focus Argo into logistical support came, which is why we see the Raft and the SRV. But we could definitely see salvage. I think we'll probably more likely see a repair ship from Argo before we see salvage, though. But it could be kind of one of those repair salvage options. Hi, Paul. How much do you think the Legionnaire will cost? In-game? I couldn't tell you. Probably the equivalent to... maybe $1 million, $2 million UEC right now. That's probably going to change. Question, 400i or the Corsair? Corsair every day. I like the 400i, but the Corsair has much more flexibility. You can put more vehicles in it. You can... has better guns. So. Do you have any videos of the different hangar types? I don't. There are lores behind them, though. Think we'll ever see that Argo capital refinery I've been waiting? Possibly. Argo ship equals salvage and repair? Possibly. Because you got to remember that the way that this that a lot of designs work is sometimes they have some like crossovers. So like repair is simply the reverse of salvage. Where salvage you're putting stuff away, your repair you're putting stuff on. That's why we already have the hand mining tool, the hand salvage tools can also repair the exterior holes. So. Question, will the hull limited ships like the Pioneer and Kraken be available in game? Yes, but they're also going to be hull limited. So they're only going to be so many sold, and they're probably going to be locked behind somewhat of a rep gate. So you'll have to A, have good reputation from them, and B, be able to hit them at the right time, and they'll probably have turnover that you'll be able to get access to. I love the Argo Foreman, basically an industrial support Kraken. I can see something like that. Question, any idea of what the new ships they might show on ISE and why it might have put it on... Okay. Any idea of what the new ships they might show on ISE and why it may have put on Anvil Day? I don't know. I think it's weird that they put it on Anvil Day. It's almost certainly going to be the Arastro that they show off, but there's no indication that we're getting a new Anvil ship, so... Question, do you think Argo will make a 500 plus cargo ships? I sure hope so. Oh, 500 plus like SCU cargo ship? Maybe. Can you make a playlist of just lore of the planets? I have. It's called my system survey. I only did 3 of them so far, but they're all just the systems. Talking about the systems. The most dangerous hangar you can have is the Vulture and Crucible only. Question, which would be the multi-role cheap game package? Mustang or Aurora? Aurora. Question, does Drake make luxury in lore, or are they only tins and cans? Tins and cans, yes. Not really, they don't really make luxury ships. If you could have one capital ship, what would you choose? Kraken or Idris? Kraken. It's more usable. Idris is good, but it's only good for combat. Man, don't put my hopes up with the Anvil Capital. Do you think we'll ever see multiple ships and long quantum jumps in the same quantum tunnel? Yeah, you can actually do some of that right now. A Mini. Anchor PC Tech, Argo Cap ship, yeah. An actual anvil for like crafting and melee manufacture? Not a clue. Well, Drake hired an adult to design their ships because 12-year-old's duct tape bubblegum design philosophy is not working for me. It's working for me, Vastin. It's working for me. Did Argo make trams or only freight rail? I think they did both because they did passenger rail for all of the passenger rail for Port Renatus, which is the capital city of Mars. Were done by Argo. Where are the Drake pole dancers? They were banned. Unknown Guardian asks, do you think CIG should let the Carrack spawn a bigger hangar? Yes. Who would you best theorize would make a medium salvage vessel? We kind of already have a medium salvage vessel with the Vulture, but if you're talking about like a ship that's like more between the Vulture and the Reclaimer, I would say RSI is a good option because RSI does everything. I could also see Drake. Those are the two I'd see the most of. I doubt we would see Argo doing it, but we could. Because of your lore, I was able to make my RP character. He's from Orison, didn't touch grass until he was 16. That's a good one. The benefit of the Idris is that it got a lot of extra beds aside from the core crew. The Kraken got enough beds to cover all its stations. Yeah, to a degree. Banned? What's banned? Who's banned? Why am I seeing banned? No, Hype, you're not banned. I don't see you in my... Why are you banned? Oh, the pole dancers. Oh, yeah, they're banned. I realized my chat was dead. My chat had stopped working a while back. I was like, why? All right, about 5 minutes left, and we'll kind of wrap this up. Question: please remind us about the problem with AI, or at least VI, in a millennia of human development. Why are we still doing everything on our own hands except wars? We're still doing it with wars too. Because every time we've developed AI, we actually developed AGI pretty early in the lore of Star Citizen that created AGI. The problem is that AI kept screwing up and killing people on massive scales. And even when they developed it in secret, it kept screwing up and nearly killing all of humanity. So it's less of a Skynet and more of a Mr. Magoo meets Skynet. It's just incapable of doing what it's supposed to. It's a Mr. Magoo-net. The first AI systems were designed, you can think of it as similar to how AI was working today, with like self-driving cars being caught hitting pedestrians and dragging them to the sides of the road, or AI chatbots becoming, Nazis within seconds of being activated, and all those sorts of things. It's more of AI as it works in Star Citizen is responsible for a lot of the major catastrophes, including the first Mars disaster of terraforming. And as AI began to constantly screw up, it eventually became banned because people didn't trust it to work right. So even though it could do things faster, it would also make things more unsafe. Now, I've asked the developers, the writers, why they did this. The effective answer is the reason why AI are banned is and have problems because they're actually still being developed in secret by several companies, including ArcCorp. Is that Chris didn't want the game to be push button. He wanted people to be physically doing stuff in game. So that's why. So they just kind of wrote in a narrative reason for it. But it's also one of the reasons why development is so slow. Because you couldn't automate things like transportation, you still need a person to transport something from A to B. Transport is much slower if it was rather than it being completely automated. People still have to build most of the mechanical work. You do have expert systems, things that are very good at one thing, like technically the fly-by-wire system on all of the ships. I think it's SCM or whatever. That system is an AI in the universe. It's just a very specified AI. It's when we start to get to general intelligence that it starts doing weird things. Yeah, that's the other thing, is that we also had 300 years of space dictatorship where the focus wasn't on actual development. It was to develop on Wunderwaffe, like Project Vespa, which was an attempt to turn terraforming lasers into weapons of mass destruction, which is insanity, because you have to build terraforming platforms in system because you can't transport them. They're too big to go through quantum or jump points. So you have to build them in system. So the idea would be like you'd have to build it in system, and it can take years to build those systems, and then you'd have to build it in a way that would destroy an entire planet, which it wouldn't do because mining lasers or terraforming lasers can't do that. So it was doomed to be in the first place, but no one said no because the imperators were giving them money. Like why say no when they're giving you billions of credits to do it? Mr. Magoo-net? Yeah. If we assume that we're going to see four sizes per profession, e.g. mining, prospector, mole, ARA, Something Orion. We can also assume that there are going to be 4 salvage. Yes, 4 salvage, and so there's space for from Argo, and from another manufacturer. I don't think Argo will do salvage, mostly because, again, Argo isn't. The Mole is a weird offshoot. I think it's more likely we'll see RSI and maybe like Misk or Drake. Because for salvage, we've got Drake, we've got Aegis, which is an offshoot as well. So we already have our offshoot for salvage. So when, RSI is a generalist. There's lots of generalists. They do a lot of generalist things. That makes sense. And then having something like Misk would also fit because they've got the heavy industry side of things. So Wonder Waffle, yes. Exactly. Realistic, we'd have aimbot turrets that would fire beyond the well beyond the horizon, which wouldn't be as fun. Question: can we expand why the Bengal is shaky, questionable in lore? What do you mean questionable? It's not questionable. It's just so what I meant by that is that CIG's definitions of starships in terms of like what they do, and especially capital ships, makes no sense because it's not based in any reality. If you look at what a Javelin is, it's a destroyer. It functions more like a cruiser does today than a destroyer does. With the Idris is much closer to a destroyer in terms of its function, but it's different. It's not that. And so like a lot of what CIG's definitions of like roles is invented. It's hogwash. Most of it doesn't make any sense. The idea of things like pathfinding, touring, they don't mean anything. They only mean what CIG wants it to mean, and sometimes it means something, sometimes it doesn't. So like the Bengal is technically a carrier. I think it's been referenced as a super carrier in the past, but it's I don't know many carriers that carry like battleship guns because it has battleship guns. What happens to terraforming platforms after they're done? If they're built where they're needed, they're stripped down. They're salvaged. So sometimes you can take some of the bigger components away and then like take them to another location. And some companies do break them down, so like they're kind of modular, where you can like bring them to an area and then like you bring different pieces and then you put them together. But it just takes a lot of time and effort. It takes a lot of resources to do that. So often you go cheap, like they'll build like a core aspect that they can ship there, and then they'll build everything else in system using in-system resources, and then when they're done, they just pull the shell away, and they take the core like aspects and they take them back to where they're going. But yeah, they're assembled and disassembled. My pronunciation of Wunderwaffe? I don't speak German, but I'm going to say Wunderwaffles. Wunderwaffles. I want my Wonder Waffle. Is Drake the only do-all manufacturer? RSI. RSI is the same. What do you think will happen with the funding model once the major sales for Squadron 42 come in, and if they start to pay out their shareholders, as those don't count as pledges anymore? Like by then, will we certainly be a different situation? I think CIG is going to keep what they have now, for sure. They're going to keep the same design philosophy and the same funding model. I think a lot of people who hope that CIG stops selling ships, I think they're wonderful idealists, but I think they're naive. I think CIG is going to keep selling ships even afterwards. Question: any dreadnoughts in Star Citizen history? Yes. The Indefatigable indefatigable. I can't say it right. Every time I say it, it sounds bad. It's indefatigable, but it's indefatigable. This is like its full term. It's a weird thing, but yeah, it's a dreadnought battleship, but it's not pronounced indefatigable. It's yeah. The only other dreadnought we have is the the Retribution, which is a super dreadnought, which is recently been built to. It's basically a human version of a king ship. So never been used in it's been used in combat, but it's never been used for its main purpose, which is to go one-on-one with a king ship. Will we be able to change up ship parts in the sense that you could claim a salvage in, for example, a Vulture if someone asks, but acutely you have an anti-scan hull with scanning equipment aboard scanning the front lines? Oh, like swap out parts to kind of create stealth versions? I don't think so. We might have some aspects of it, but like not a lot. Is there going to be submarines / underwater craft plus cities in the game? There are plans on submarines and underwater craft, and there are underwater cities in lore. But the question is more, it's more of a if or when question, which it's hard to tell. As a fellow Drake fan, how do you feel about the C1 Spirit? Flying it feels like I'm cheating on my Cutlass, but it's so good. It's fine. The C1 Spirit's great. It's just huge. Like I'm a big fan of the Freelancer. Like I love Drake, but Freelancer is still my favorite ship. Corsair is my favorite ship, but Freelancer is my favorite kind of that sort of size ship. It's Freelancer series. I've got a Freelancer Max, so I love it. It's great, and I miss. And they're great. I'll fly them when I can't fly my Cutlasses. So. Thank you, Bendor. The accent is on the fat. Indefatigable. Indefatigable. Oh, there we go. That's what it is. Indefatigable. Fatigable. Yeah. You're a super dreadnought. Nobody got the heart to tell you. I am a super dreadnought, baby. I got that junk in the trunk. This is your first time? Yes, it's weird. You know it to be true, Dog Demon. You know my junk. You know my several arrays of ship buster railguns. Asper, didn't you theorize that the Retribution might be a retro-engineered Hades weapon on it? Yes, I still think it is. I think its main weapon is the planet killer weapon. He got the dumpy. For those of you who don't know, this is me normally. I'm very formal when I do the do the AstroHistorian videos, but every so often I kind of crack a joke here and there. But I am very extra on my normal streaming stuff. The main weaponry is the Paul Shelley. Unhinged? Yeah, that's where it worked. Is the MSR going to get a pilot door or another door near the cockpit? Man, I hope it gets a full redesign. The exterior is fine. The interior sucks. It needs the freelancer / Connie pass just because it's a weird design. If you're trapped in an unknown space with only one ship available, what would you choose? Corsair. Do you own many ships or just Drake? I have a Freelancer Miss, a Freelancer Max, Banner Merchantman, Perseus, Cutlass Red, Corsair, Ranger, Nova Tank. I think that's about it. Probably my most expensive ship is the Perseus. I just love that thing. I have a little over $1,000 into the game over the last 6 years. I've spent way more than that, but that's like pretty much anything over $1,000 is like maybe 1,500 has been going to giveaways. I've been in the project since 2013. 2013, yeah. Do you think there will be different Consolidated Outland ships released before the Pioneer? Probably. Pioneer is going to be a while. We might see a smaller Pioneer ship, or a smaller version of the Pioneer, or maybe something like a smaller version of the Band of Merchantmen. Who knows? In terms of like selling ships. It's like when you run into your professor during your free time. Everyone, don't enable this replicant. He has the real Paul tied up somewhere. Do you think there'll be different Consolidated Outland ships before? Yeah, I already read that. What's my views on the Nautilus? It's neat. It doesn't hold enough mines, I don't think, to make it valuable, but it can have its value a little bit. The Endeavor is amazing. For those who don't know, the Endeavor is one of the best ships for value in the game because it costs like it's like $350. But that ship currently is nowhere near the metrics because it uses the older metrics for the game because it's super old. And based off of the current metrics of how things work, that ship is going to grow incredibly high, like probably the same size as a Javelin in terms of length and size. Like if you look at the Galaxy, the Odyssey, if you look at the Misk Odyssey, the Odyssey is likely about the same size as the front cabin, just the front cabin of the Endeavor. That doesn't include the rear drive section or the main section where you put all the modules onto. It's nuts. Privateer BMM. I like the BMM, probably the Privateer, but I just don't have the money for it. What happened to the rope announcement? It was lovely to see you at CitizenCon, by the way. Rope announcement? I don't know what you're talking about. It was good to see you too. It was good to see all of you. All of you who saw me at CitizenCon. I was overwhelmed by the number of people who saw me and said, "Hey, Paul." I'm like, I don't know who any of you are. What's going on? A Redeemer. Do you think we'll see many industrial alien vessels, like maybe a Banu Scraper? Maybe at some point. Oh, do you love it so much? Oh yeah, I have the Redeemer, but I didn't buy the Redeemer. Like I've got also an F8 Lightning, but I didn't buy it. I have a Nautilus, but it wasn't given. It was given to me. I didn't purchase it. Gosh, what are some of the other ones? What's your question, Half Horson? What came first, bases or Pioneer? They came at the same time. They announced bases when they announced the Pioneer. Wasn't it Corsair that Jax was in when he became Lost in Pyro? No, it was the Odyssey. He was in Lost in Pyro. He was in the Corsair at the end of that whole thing when he got hit by a solar flare. I knew it. My Redeemer senses were tingling. Oh gosh, dang it, see daddy. Why do you hate the Redeemer? So the best way of explaining why I hate the Redeemer comes from a couple different facts. Number one, it was the worst decision out of all of the options that could have been made for when it was originally made, because it was originally made for the next great starship competition, and there are many other better designs that should have won that didn't make it in. The reason why it won was because it was very good at winning. It was designed to win the competition. They did everything they could to try to meet the meta of what the Star Citizen fans at the time were looking for, including a coffee maker. It had a unique design look, so it could attract more people to it. It had this, so did everything right to win the competition, which I hate about it. It's a ship designed by committee. And anyone who's heard the term a game designed by committee and knows how bad that is, that's my point. It's a ship that was designed by committee, and then CIG had to figure out how to make it work. So what did they do? They broke physics and then put gigantic guns on it to make it more valuable. That's it. They had to break the game to make it work. It still doesn't do a good job of what it's designed to do. It needs to be fixed in ways that would completely change how the ship looks, which they won't do. And it also has no lore. It doesn't look, or there's no explanation as to why it looks like it does, and why it was made by Aegis, which it looks nothing like any of the other Aegis ships out there. It makes no sense. And I hate it. And Never is also going to go up in price. Yeah, that's true. The Info Runners converted to the Cult of Never. Welcome, brother. Welcome to the cult. Astro, what's my favorite alien race? The Banu are my favorite alien race. What's your opinion on the new alien ship, the Sulian, for a new player? I wouldn't suggest them for a new player. They're definitely good if you want someone who's like more interested in the uniqueness of Star Citizen. But you're not hard to spot across the room. I'm very large. But I'm small compared to like everybody else in the Star Citizen community. God damn. Anybody who's a Citizen can tell you just how big content creators are. I don't know. Like, they're just huge. I'm 6'1". Me and Zero were about the same height, and we were just like dwarfed by the size of people. The only person who was who I saw sat there and was like, "You are small," was Gabby. Gabby is very small. It never reminds me of the 70s sci-fi film Silent Running. Do you know that one? Yeah, I think I know that one. Question, speculation time. Do you think we'll ever see a pledged carrier from, say, RSI, like a 500-long mini Bengal? Maybe, maybe not. The Scimitar, the Brutus, all of them are much better. Even the Silverback was good. And I'm not kissing up to the Silverback just because the person who made the Silverback is now in charge of the NA North America ship team. Yeah, it breaks the Javelin lore. That's one of the reasons why, like, there's ways to fix the lore. There is ways to fix the lore for the Redeemer. And the answer, and I've actually fixed it. I did a speculative fiction sort of, how do I fix the Redeemer in terms of giving it lore that makes sense with everything? And the short answer is, the Redeemer we have now is not the first Redeemer. It is the second variant. Like the Hornet Mark II, it is the Mark II Redeemer, with the first one being a human copy of the Prowler. And when they needed to update the designs, they decided to update the Redeemer, but they updated it at the exact same time as the Anti-Mezzo Revolution. So it took them a long time to get that prototype. It nearly got destroyed and eventually got brought back out because it was like, well, we could use this new idea from Aegis, and they used this new idea and decided to adapt it. But that's why it's new, because it's old. It's an old design that had been kept in storage for a long time and eventually adapted. So small but incredibly deadly. Yes, that's what we're putting it. Morph is a giant. Yes. Do you think the Galaxy will go up Saturday? Up in price? Possibly. Not a question, but just saying, looking forward to seeing we could buy in-game tickets for lore tours. Yeah, I mean, if CIG, yeah, I'm not going to sell them yet. Lore should be made the way the designers made it. Should be it was made by a designer's son that passed away tragically. The ship designer worked for Aegis. Buster's not that small. How tall is Morphologist? 6'5", 6'6". He doesn't look it. He's huge. Have people got pets in the Star Citizen universe and lore? Yes. Going good. I'm actually kind of wrapping up here. Kronzi is huge too. Yeah, he's not a rail, but he's thin. I'm much bigger than most people. The only reason why I don't look necessarily huge is because I'm 6'1". You definitely lose some weight though. If you saw me on screen, you probably saw that I'm the fat guy in the suit. Burks is about 6 foot. He's about my height too. Alien Races when in the PU? Soon, TM. Yeah, Avenger 1 is also huge. He's about the same size too. Do birds exist? Never seen one. They're government. It's a government conspiracy, a government cover up. There's no such thing as birds. That, or they are. There's no such thing as birds. They're all just dinosaurs that have pretended that they're something different. I just have more gravity. Paul, wish you and the Cam and the kitties a good turkey day tomorrow. You too. I'll take this last couple of questions. I'm going to wrap it up. So UAE is still using dreadnoughts or not? They're not using dreadnoughts. Why? Are they gone naval? They're gone as their naval predecessors. I believe the problem is that the main combatant of the 30th century is that UAE has to face is the Vanduul. And the problem about the Vanduul is that they are very nimble. They are skirmishers. So to bring to bear a big, heavy armored warship like a dreadnought to combat requires a lot of maneuvering, which it's going to be slow and like not very fast to get into position, which means it's going to be much more vulnerable to bombers and bomber attacks, which is the main reason why the dreadnoughts have basically stopped being used by the UAE. They still apparently have cruisers and battle cruisers, but it's one of the reasons why the Bengals are designed the way they are. If you look at the way that the Bengals designed with sort of like these sloping edges to them, it's because it's designed to be kind of resistant against melee attacks, because that's how the Vanduul attack is, through melee. At least partially designed for that. What's up with Pico the Penguin and lore? There are no penguins on Microtech. It's just a mascot. Happy Thanksgiving to you too there, Polite Gaming. My entire org is full of geeks, in particular RP geeks. My brother and I have been written org lore, and everyone in Citizens has background lore. We do the same for Elite. Nice. Finley the Stormwall. The Stormwall. Really nice, really awesome IAE 2953 Lord Day Astro. Had a really nice time, learning much. We appreciate the stream. Thank you, Mopar. Ramming ships in space seems kind of dumb and risky. It is. But it's not if you're a Vanduul. Vanduul are fucking insane. On top of that, Vanduul can survive in the vacuum of space without a suit. We actually saw them. Not only do they have battle cruisers and cruisers, but we saw them in game in the I Held the Line trailer. Vanduul sounds scary. You want me to make them more scary? They're 9 feet tall. And if the more naked they are, the more advanced they are. They actually strip armor off of themselves the more advanced they get. They love to get into close quarters combat and can survive multiple rounds of basic ammunition. You have to use very, very big guns to bring them down. And by the time they get within range of your big guns like shotguns, they're already in range to stab you and kill you. They're very fast, very deadly, can survive the vacuum of space, and love to get in melee combat in all types. And they will never, ever stop attacking you until they're dead. They rarely, if ever, retreat. So Morph could easily dunk on a Vanduul. Vanduul 9 feet tall. So Morph is taller. Sufficiently terrified, thanks. No problem. Is every good investment? It's hard to tell. I would say no. With that, I think I'm going to call it because my camera died. But thank you all for hanging out with us. And remember, like I say every time, I'll see you tomorrow. Happy Thanksgiving if I don't see you. And like I say every time, ex Historia ad Astra.